So 6 months ago, before the UK went into lockdown, I developed COVID symptoms. I wanted to share what COVID has been like for me and the impact this has had on my life. I was fit and healthy prior to developing symptoms and only had very mild asthma. I self-isolated at home and managed with the symptoms as best I could. I was given antibiotics in the first week and was told to go to A&E in the second week by my GP. It was a brief visit and I was sent home and told to rest up. After 2 weeks I was feeling somewhat better and returned to work. My return was short-lived. After a week and a half back I went downhill quickly. What proceeded after this point was months of struggling with this illness. I was unable to breathe properly. I could not walk halfway up the stairs without getting out of breath. On almost a daily basis I would feel as if I was about to faint. I experienced crippling pain in my chest, my ribs, head, ears and neck. At times the pain was so bad that if I was sitting up I had to support my head with my hand to stop it from falling down. My sleep deteriorated. Some nights I was getting as little as 2 hours sleep. At times when I did manage to sleep I would wake up in the night in excruciating pain or wake up and feel like I was drowning or suffocating and struggle to catch my breath. The exhaustion and unwavering fatigue that people who have had COVID have become far too familiar with became a daily part of my life. I was unable to do normal everyday tasks such as cook or clean. Even eating was exhausting at times. I had to make a lot of adaptations in everyday life to cope with the debilitating effects of it. One of the most worrying things that happened was the rapid decline in my cognitive function. I was forgetting people's names, forgetting words. Halfway through a sentence I would forget what I had been talking about and would need to be reminded. I lost the ability to concentrate for even short amounts of time and was unable to do things I'd previously done, like read. I would forget how to do things I knew before. So I actually forgot how to draw a graph in Excel. It took me 5 days of opening up Excel to try and figure that one out. I mean, I can laugh about that now, but there were nights in the first few months where I thought, I don't know if I'll wake up in the morning. And I don't say that to be dramatic, it's just to highlight the reality of how sick COVID can make you. As the months went on, trying to recover felt like plodding through mud, and I kept pushing to get better, trying to do all the right things. Time was passing really quickly. At 1.5 weeks had passed and it felt like a couple of days. The fatigue might improve for a few days. The brain fog would slightly lift and I thought I was making progress, but at the same time I was still having to spend a lot of my day in bed. I was getting out of breath, walking up the stairs, and my heart rate was erratic. I knew something was wrong with my heart and thankfully my GP listened to me and referred me for cardiac investigations. One of the tests I needed to have was an echocardiogram, which I had to fight for them not to delay because I still had symptoms. At this stage, I had had symptoms for over 3 months. At one point, I can remember ringing my GP practice and telling them I was deteriorating. I was still struggling with breathlessness on minimal exertion, and my pulse continued to be erratic. It was going as low as 43 beats per minute, and then minutes later it would shoot up into the 150s, 160s. I got told to hang on in there for the echo, that I was in a sticky position, not quite fitting into acute services or primary care. As soon as I had the echo, I knew by the reaction of the clinician that all was not right. When I got the results the following week, I found out the virus had damaged the walls of my heart in multiple locations and had reduced its functioning significantly, so much so that it put me in the heart failure corner of heart disease. I was unsure of what the treatment would be, as was my GP. As again, we had to wait for communication between primary and acute services. Initially I was okay with this news. There was a sense of relief that I finally had some answers, but that was short-lived and it was hard dealing with this and not knowing what needed to happen next. The next day I ended up in A&E again with crippling chest pain and shortness of breath. This was my 5th time in 4 months and I was reluctant to go because of the experience I had on previous visits. I only went because a friend persuaded me. The 4 previous times had been via GPs, and on some of those visits I got a very strong feeling they thought it was just anxiety and I was worrying a bit too much. At times I found myself having to defend the GPs who told me to go to A&E. Up until this point I'd been told, you're young, fit and healthy, you need to rest but you will recover. That night in A&E that changed to, you're young, fit and healthy, you should not be experiencing this. What helped with this sudden change is that the echo results were available and I had tested positive for antibodies a few weeks before. I was never tested when I became ill in the beginning as testing had stopped. I got admitted to hospital and I genuinely felt relieved and happy that finally something was happening. This was 4 months after I initially developed the symptoms. I spent a week in a cardiology ward, had an angiogram done that was thankfully clear, and was discharged with the diagnosis of post-COVID myocarditis and medication to treat this. They didn't know if my heart function would improve, and I was told by one doctor it could even be worse than what the echo showed. I had to wait for a cardiac MRI to find out the true extent of the damage. Thankfully, when I did have the MRI and got the results, it showed that my heart function had started to improve with the medication, which was a relief. For months, I kept saying I was sick a few weeks, but it was more like sick for over 4 months and then started slowly recovering. I am improving, just very slowly. The physical and cognitive issues still remain, but not to the extent that they did previously. If I overdo it, I feel the effects of this for days, and I am back to being limited by what I can do. The last time this happened, I ended up in hospital yet again. My legs went weak, my joints started seizing up, and I struggled to walk. It got to the point where I was struggling to stand. They had no idea why this happened. The longer I've been sick, it has affected my mental health. It is manageable, but there have been days where things have been really hard to deal with, both physically and mentally. One of the hardest things has been trying to navigate the health system in the county. Not an easy task at the best of times, but even worse during COVID. Much of the waiting was due to communication between services. It came across as fragmented and disjointed, with the patient being left out and not aware of what was happening with their care. I would not be this far down the line with my recovery if it wasn't for the fantastic rehab support I received. Up until August, this was not from services, but was from my friends who are healthcare professionals. They are the people who provided me with professional support, advice and guidance with my recovery to help me to get to this point today. There was no form of rehabilitation offered to me from services until the second week in August, 5 months after I was initially ill. And at this point, in addition to support from friends, I had sought professional support privately. I genuinely believe if I had earlier intervention from services, I wouldn't still be this ill. Early intervention in the form of a multidisciplinary team that supports a post-COVID pathway for not only people admitted to ICUs, a pathway that can provide early access to diagnostics and care that supports a person's rehabilitation and recovery. AHPs are key to this. This would support better communication between primary, acute and community services and ensure the patient knows what is going on with their care. There's a few reasons I wanted to share what COVID has been like for me. Firstly, to highlight the impact of this illness on a person. It is not just like a bad flu, it can be a lot worse. It isn't just a case of mortality when speaking about COVID. The narrative needs to change to include talking about morbidity. Secondly, I'm not unique. There are thousands in a similar situation to me still struggling with the debilitating effects of this illness. And finally, a lot of what I am saying is related to acute and primary care services. We need to support them and act now in providing people in the county with support from COVID, those who were both admitted to hospital initially and those that were not. In the long term, this burden will hit us with people needing support in their own homes, as well as needing to access support for their mental health. I was asked by someone at what point should I have received treatment or rehab, and the best way of answering that is, if I was your family member, when would you have wanted me to have access? When I think of my family, I think as soon as possible, because I would want them to have the best chance for full recovery.